Discussion keeps the world turning.
This is Roundtable.
A year ago, open source AI was just tech jargon for serious coders. Now, though, anyone can download, tweak, and share these models. So who benefits in that situation? Well, some see innovation, others see risk, but this affects the apps that you and I use and the choices that you and I will have. 1 year after DeepSeek changed the game, where do we stand now? Coming to you live from our studios in Beijing, this is Roundtable. I'm Steve Hatherley. Thank you so much for being with us today. And for the show, I'm with Feifei and Yusha. First up, a year ago or so, open source AI sounded like something that you might hear in a very serious meeting between people who own too many keyboards. But something has changed. AI models are no longer just products sitting behind the walls of a few giant tech companies. More and more of them are being opened up, downloaded, modified, shared, and built upon by people all around the world. But if everyone can get their hands on the technology, well then who comes out on top? Does open source make AI cheaper or faster or more accessible? And I wonder this too, can companies really make money by giving their technology away? Or is it truly being given away? And should some AI models perhaps not be opened up at all? That needs to be discussed. Maybe more importantly, what does it have to do with you or me? So let's talk about it. 1 year after DeepSeek put open source AI firmly in the spotlight, where are we now and what has changed over the last 12 months? Feifei and Yushin, good afternoon to you both. Yushin, I remember you and I were on the show last year when we were talking about open source, when it was just kind of a new term and people weren't really familiar with it yet. And we were trying to come up with these examples of, what does open source actually mean? And now here we are a year later, and it's a term that's widely discussed and continuously discussed in the tech world.
Of course, open source itself is not that new, but it is kind of the idea that probably last year was the first time that get into our eyes. And last year you might have downloaded an open model to run a chatbot or test its reasoning ability. That's what a lot of these coders would do, and probably software engineers. Today, the same kind of model can sit inside a company's AI system. It can search internal documents for employees, help programmers write and debug their code, power customer service agents, or analyze data from a factory. So developers can also take an existing model and fine-tune it for a specific industry and feature and build an AI product around it instead of just training a model from scratch. So in other words, the change is that open source AI is moving up the technology stack from a model you experiment with to a tool you can actually build a business or service around.
Yeah, I think in the past when DeepSeek actually, for not a very tech savvy person like me, open source is kind of the term that could slip very quickly because there are a lot of terms surrounding that model that they publish. But what's really catching our attention now, 1 year after DeepSeek really put open source AI in the spotlight, is that we are seeing some report, in particular the Hugging Faces Spring 2026 report, which is the world's largest online community and platform for sharing and developing open source AI models. They said China-developed open source models accounted for more than 40% of all model downloads worldwide. That is even bigger than the United States. And another data coming from the China's Ministry of Industry and Information Technology also said that accumulated downloads of Chinese AI models have surpassed 10 billion.
Yeah, there's lots of reporting going on. There was another report on a platform that allows users to access different AI models through one interface. It's called OpenRouter. They were talking about the fact that the top 5 most called models are now from Chinese companies. Xiaomi is one of those. DeepSeek is one. Tencent is one. The Xiaomi one, it's called Mimo, I think, the
Yes.
V2.5 version 2.5. That one, for example, reportedly reached 10.5 trillion tokens in weekly calls. So it is a sign that open source is becoming more common and that China is leading the way, apparently, as well.
Yeah.
You can understand this called as most used for now. We'll explain it later. But the thing is that it is just widely used worldwide, not only in China. Of course, the user base here in China is huge. But the thing is that in these kind of international and global platforms, it is also showing a big trend that these Chinese AI models are being used by like engineers and also developers worldwide.
And that brings me a new question, really, for me, actually. Open source. I'm assuming if there is open source, there is closed source. So what does
Yes.
what does open source mean? I mean, does it mean that it's open to everyone like you and me that is not really a developer or business?
Yeah. Let me use a kind of analogy so that you can maybe understand easily. A closed source AI model is like going to a restaurant. You order a dish, the chef prepares it for you, and you eat it. You don't get the recipe or the ingredients. You simply just use the finished product and you pay for them. An open source model is more like being given the recipe and also ingredients. The restaurant offer you everything. You can take them home. You can cook the dish yourself and change the recipe and build something new from it.
It's a meal kit,
Yeah.
kind of.
So that's something that I can work on if I have the know-how myself.
Yes, so in the AI world, this generally means developers make important parts of the model available so that other people and developers can download it and run it and modify and build upon it depending on the specific license, like what kind of other feature they are allowed to use. And this is where some terminology can get confusing because we mentioned calling, right?
Yeah, let's talk about the terms here. Calling a model versus, I guess the opposite would be downloading it, right?
If I don't have a powerful computer capable of running a large AI model, I can simply just call it, which means that my computer sends a request to a model running somewhere else, maybe the server of this platform that you're using, and then through an API or other interface, I use the model remotely and then pay according to how much text the model processes. And then downloading.
So it's on a server somewhere.
So I
Yeah.
can sort of
You can use it.
analogy like making a phone call.
You can use it. And the API, think of it like the waiter in the restaurant. The waiter takes your order and then goes to the kitchen and tells the chef, the model, what to make. And then once the model, the chef, makes it, the API, the waiter brings it back to you.
So
Same
I can
thing.
sort
Your
of,
computer to a server somewhere that's doing the work for you, and it gets delivered back to you.
but downloading is different.
Yeah, because a company such as a bank or energy company or a government agency may want to put a model on its own servers, and that gives the organization more control over data, customization, and how the model is integrated into their own systems. So you can think of downloading as calling is like ordering the food, and downloading is like taking the recipe and cooking it in your own kitchen.
Like catering on some level, right?
You're doing it by yourself. Parameters is another term that's kind of a big deal when we talk about AI.
Yeah. How powerful it is.
How big it is, how powerful it is. It's interesting because some companies, it was on July 27th, right? That's when Moonshot AI officially released the full model weights. We're going to have to talk about weights too, and tech support for Kimi K3. That's the LLM from Moonshot AI, right? It was in the news everywhere. Really kind of huge LLM. The size of this, the parameters of this were bigger than anything I've ever heard of before.
Exactly. And it is one of the kind that it is taking the lead globally. So it says with 2.8 trillion parameters, Kimi K3 is an enormous model. Its total parameter count is more than 4 times that 671 billion parameters in DeepSeek V3. It is I think, consumer size model that DeepSeek is releasing from last year. And, and this model is also one of the open models that helped put China's AI industry on the global map.
Parameters are kind of confusing because I don't really understand what it means beyond, and I don't need to, beyond knowing that it's kind of like the size of the model, the scale of the model, and somehow what it's capable of. But just because we know that Kimi K3 has 2.8 trillion parameters and DeepSeek V3 only 671 billion, that doesn't mean Kimi K3 is 4 times stronger than DeepSeek V3, right?
Yeah.
And that's where it gets a little confusing, I think.
It's another concept of how, like, when you're texting to these Kimi K3, it's not using all of the 2.8 trillion parameters. It's probably only using their activated 1 billion kind of thing. And that's particularly striking comparison because DeepSeek V3 itself was already considered a huge model when it was released. And then this Kimi uses a mixture of experts architecture, meaning it doesn't activate all of their 2.8 trillion parameters for every question.
Yeah. The more parameters, the more capable it is of completing complex tasks, right? But for people like us who are just saying,
Asking questions.
what's a parameter?
Yeah.
It's not going to need 2.8 trillion to complete that. That's why little smaller models are okay for us for everyday use.
And then here comes another idea is that for other kind of international companies like ChatGPT and Claude from Anthropic, we cannot make the same, parameter count comparison because their company do not publicly disclose the size of their latest frontier models. And that is also kind of the idea explained what open source is. Open source means we know how much parameter or how big it is, and then closed sourced, we don't know how it is.
Yeah, and I was looking that up because I wondered, why would and Kimi K3, that's open source, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So why would this company make their model open source? Why did DeepSeek do it last year? But why do Anthropic and ChatGPT, for example, I think the earlier versions of ChatGPT, they made their parameter counts public, but I think it's kept private now. So why do they do that? And there's a couple of reasons I found. One is security. I think we're going to touch on that a little bit later. But another is just competitive advantage, because what they say is that if you release your parameter count, that's kind of a clue, or it can be a clue to how your model was constructed. So companies keep that. That's one of the reasons they keep it private.
So for a company that deciding that they're launching an open source model like Kimi, like Moonshot or DeepSeek, they're sort of quote unquote revealing at least partially of their quote-unquote secret to the public. And that is also why I think for a long time when I saw it on the news, this company released their own AI models using DeepSeek. So they're basically using what DeepSeek released and then developing their own version of tools based on AI.
But it is also important to mention that, open source doesn't necessarily mean completely free. The model weights are available, but using the model at scale still involves computing costs and also the license. The license comes with commercial conditions, and we'll come back to what open actually means and how companies can actually make money from their open sourced models later.
Yeah, you're not simply giving it away. There's a business. There is a business model here. Going back to DeepSeek, though, what happened to open source after all that excitement? Because that was kind of the big thing when DeepSeek came out. It dominated the tech headlines because people couldn't believe that they were able to construct a model like that at the cost that they did, and it was also open source. So that was the big news at the time. But what happened in the aftermath?
One of the biggest changes is that open source AI appears to be moving from the kind of experimental stage from last year into something much more practical. And the story is no longer simply about how these companies are competitive enough to build competitive AI models. It is increasingly about whether those models are becoming part of the global AI ecosystem. And there are some data is showing that the data from the US investment institutions, as many as 80% of American AI startups are now using Chinese open source models in their fundraising pitches. And on average, more than 200 derivative models are being developed every day based on Chinese foundation models.
So thinking, for example, DeepSeek, that is basically my knowledge. It sort of has this very powerful and general purpose engine. It is very smart and it can handle a lot of different questions. But for instance, a small company or a city government, that they don't have this generic engine, but it also needs one that knows its own local rules, knows its forms, knows its policies, and that is when they take that engine from that DeepSeek structure and architecture and then adapt it. They feed in their own documents, train it on local regulation, and tweak it so that it can give accurate answers about very specific and detailed things. And that is what we are talking about when we're seeing, these startups are using Chinese open source models.
Yeah, because I think a local government is a great example. I think a bank is another great example.
Yeah.
A bank would, if a bank has a chat bot, well, the people who ask questions to that bank chat bot, those are going to be bank-related questions, right?
Exactly.
So you wouldn't just put DeepSeek as your chatbot. You would take the open source DeepSeek or Kimi K3 if you need it to be that many parameters, meaning if you need it to be that big and complex, and you would fine tune it to your own needs so that it can answer questions specifically that customers of your bank would ask. And this is about creating a better service for your customers and a better tool for your company.
Yeah. At core, they all share the same powerful base, but each one is tailored to a unique or specific task. And this is exactly what's happening with these platforms. They take, for example, the AI models from DeepSeek as the foundation, and then they reshape it to serve their own users and making the AI useful in real life, not in labs.
So let's talk about the money now, because I too, when I hear open source, I think it's being given away. It's free, and it makes me think, what a terrible business strategy.
What a generous
yes.
company DeepSeek is.
Exactly. How generous you are, but what a terrible business strategy. But it doesn't mean that it's entirely free, and it also doesn't mean that there's no business model here.
As we just mentioned, that it does not necessarily mean it is totally free, and there will be a kind of ecosystem acquisition cost, which means that instead of thinking of the model itself as the final product, a company can see it as a way of getting millions of developers and businesses into its ecosystem. And once they're there are plenty of things that company can charge for. So when you're using this kind of core, companies can charge customers to run an open source model on their cloud servers. It can be charged for your fee, and then they can also provide technical support, fine-tune the model for particular companies' needs, or offer platforms that allow businesses to build their own AI agents and applications, like the example that you just listed, Fei. This probably city or local government platform, they don't have a technician to develop their own chatbot, and then they're using the core of DeepSeek, and they may hire somebody to maintain this platform. So this will all be charged by these companies.
They call it, they don't download it.
Yeah, and there are also subscriptions and paid tools because for Moonshot, Kimi K3, I am a paid user of
nice.
that model actually, and they also launched like different different hierarchies of payment that you can pay, so that you can. I think for me, I pay the bare minimum of paid subscription on Kimi 3. So when I'm asking that model to, for example, write a report based on a certain theme, they can start to at least give me a better report compared with the free version of it.
Yeah, it's. I guess that's a good way to put it. It seems like you get a smarter version of itself.
Yeah. And also you can when it comes to, if there are a lot of too many users are using the same model at the same time, I think we talked about that during that when we were explaining what token is. You can also sort of have privilege to use the token that you need compared with people, for example, don't pay or subscribe to this model.
The model itself is like a free front door of the restaurant that we just listed. Once people walk in, the company can offer all sorts of paid extras. And that's where the real money comes from. It's not, charity. It's a smart way to build a huge customer base first, and then charge for the convenience or maybe safety, and then tailoring the most businesses need.
Yeah. It's maybe if you buy a piece of gym equipment that only works at one gym. I don't think that's a great analogy, but that just popped into my mind because it's not forcing customers to come back to the creator of the model, but it does make a lot of sense a lot of the time. All right, now let's talk about that's from a business point of view. What about people like you and I? What difference does it make if we have more companies that are open source now, if we have a lot of the open source downloads, coming from wonderful Chinese companies? What difference does this make for us?
I think from a ordinary person, a citizen's point of view, what I can see from this year is that more AI chatbots or AI platforms are just surrounding us in our daily lives. Basically, it feels like no matter what kind of feature they have or what kind of industry they are in, they're offering you an AI solution.
Somehow, some way.
Right? Which means that, the most important change is that open source AI is increasingly being connected to the real economy. And according to China's Ministry of Industry and Information Technology, the country's AI Plus Manufacturing Initiative aims to promote 500 typical application scenarios by 2027. And that means AI isn't only being, imagined as something that answers questions and maybe writes emails. It is increasingly being connected to a lot of areas: manufacturing, energy, transportation, healthcare, and other industries.
Yeah, healthcare. There's a hospital in Jiangsu that now uses a free adapted AI to help doctors check for symptoms and spot drug risks and remind patients about medications and things like that. And we talked about the use of AI in hospitals, right? Well, Jiangsu, I'm not sure if they used the open sourced model from DeepSeek or if it was another open source model, but and this is where it makes a difference for hospital patients, and for doctors too, is that hospital, if they didn't have access, you can correct me anywhere if I'm wrong here, but this is how I understand it. If that hospital didn't have access to an open source AI model, then they would have to completely build their own AI model from scratch. Now, those are doctors and nurses, and I don't know if they know how to build an AI model from scratch, but probably not, right?
Yeah, and also when it comes to the payment, if you want to build an AI model from scratch for a small hospital in a county, in a Chinese province, I don't think they have the resources to start.
So they take that AI model and they have their own team. Or I'm guessing they can hire people from the original creator of the open the AI open source, like you just talked about before, Yushin, from the business model, to help create a personalized platform for that specific hospital in Jiangsu. And because that hospital in Jiangsu has that model, that AI model in their hospital to help doctors and help patients, that is one of many examples how it affects us in our everyday lives.
Yeah.
It's simply just probably before they may not even have the service or AI service. And now there just got I think, assistant that connects more between the patients and the doctors, because these kind of adapted AI, they can help doctors to check symptoms, to spot drug risks, to remind patients about medications. Probably compared to last year when a small town doctor had to rely only on memory and also paper files. Now the doctor has a smart assistant that never gets tired.
What an upgrade.
Yeah. And another part I think is also a way to about digital inclusion. Because when we are, for example, when we're talking about extreme weather events, when we're talking about natural disasters, to put it on a global context, for a lot of countries around the world, they don't have the resources to pinpoint forecast every natural disasters and extreme weather events, because they don't have the resources, don't have satellites of their own. They don't know they have the platform to make the calculation and forecasts. And I think in this year in China, they also launched a sort of open source meteorological early warning platform called Mazu, which is helping a lot of countries, meaning they put a similar structure to make forecasts, collect data, make early warnings, and then countries, for example, Pakistan or Djibouti or Mongolia, they can build and tweak that Mazu platform and make their own weather forecasts.
And Mazu, I know, is the local ocean goddess to protect people from that region.
Yeah. So a traditional Chinese sea goddess.
Yeah.
And now we are seeing a lot of least developed countries around the world, like in Africa, Djibouti. They're also developing their own version of Mazu that can help improve their forecasting weathers. And also in Jordan, they are developing their own Arab language model for floods, droughts, and heat waves. Yeah. So I think in this way, you're sort of closing that gap for a lot of countries and groups in the society when it comes to this development of AI, and sounds like a very advanced and also very expensive technology.
Yeah, creates a more level playing field.
Yes.
We hear the leaders of the tech giants talk about open source all the time and how they feel about it. The CEO of NVIDIA, Jensen Huang, he said, I think he talked about the fact that there should be a balance between closed models and open models. The Microsoft CEO said that open source is a key component to having a healthy AI ecosystem. The Google CEO said that I think Google specifically has benefited from open source. Why do they say that? Either, having a balanced system between closed and open, or open benefits and Google also benefited. Why are these biggest tech companies in the world benefiting? Because I would assume Google, you can't make your own stuff. They're using open source stuff too. So why is that?
Yeah, I'm really glad that we're talking about this. This is kind of a deeper layer of why this world is kind of embracing the open source kind of thing. And of course, open source is widely used in a lot of these technology companies, and there is a practical business reason behind this support. And these companies are not just watching the open source system. They're actually using it, also contributing it. And NVIDIA releases open models for developers to build AI applications and robotics and other systems on in NVIDIA hardware. So
the gym equipment that only works at the gym.
Exactly.
At one gym.
So you can understand as if the world is widely using open source, of course, the world is using more chips. And then, of course, NVIDIA is benefiting from this. And Microsoft lets customers bring different open models into their like Azure AI and Copilot ecosystem. And Google has released open source tools such as Gemini CL1. And of course, Android is a very well-known open sourced tool for the worldwide developers. So they can build its AI products around a wider ecosystem of open source frameworks. So open source can expand the entire AI ecosystem, and these companies make money from different parts of that ecosystem, no matter it's the software, it's the hardware, cloud computing, developer tools, or AI services.
But not everybody's on board, though, because I already said that Anthropic and OpenAI, there was an article in the New York Times that was talking about this. Those two companies, OpenAI and Anthropic, they're expressing real concern about this. They're actually lobbying regulators in Washington to restrict open source models. The head of public policy, I think her name is Sarah Heck from Anthropic, said that these companies, what they say is that open source models could be misappropriated. They could be used for adversarial purposes, intelligence purposes, making them too dangerous for unrestricted release. And unrestricted, you mentioned, you said the term maybe 15 minutes ago, Yushin, the weights.
Yeah.
The weights are removed. And correct me again if I'm wrong, when the weights are removed from the AI source, it means it's completely unrestricted.
So everybody can sort of tap in and use it.
And I think that is one of the biggest arguments. That's why Anthropic and OpenAI say that this could potentially be a little bit dangerous if put in the wrong hands.
I mean, yeah, from their perspective, it is understandable, right? It's like you are using another company's recipe or maybe the skeleton of that whole robot, and then you will be concerned about the safety and public security, that kind of thing.
Yeah, I think the robots are pretty easy to understand example, because if you have a robot that's basically like a blank canvas to your engineers, well, they could do some bad stuff with that.
Then another of their concern could be about intellectual property. Like they spend a lot of resources in building the skeleton of this robot, and now somebody else is building more new, flashier things based on their skeleton. It just feels like that their fruits are being stolen by somebody else, which I think on some level for some of the biggest for OpenAI and Anthropic, they're probably one of the biggest AI companies in the world.
Yeah, and the AI, it's getting more powerful. It's getting smarter. It's getting faster. And I think what they're saying is what it's capable of in the future. You know, some of these technologies are too powerful to release without some safeguards on what they're capable of doing. All right, well, let's leave it there. I know that we talked about this for quite a while today, but on Roundtable, what we like to do is take a topic that's maybe not so easy to understand if you go to layer 1, layer 2, layer 3, and beyond, and make it accessible for everyone, including myself. And I feel, how do you feel, Fei-Fei? I feel like I know more today.
Yeah, I learned a lot. Keywords, parameter, weights, so on and so forth. Open source, closed source. I'll now have a clearer picture.
And Yushin put this together, this explanation, lengthy explanation together for us. So thanks for that, Yushin. Very good.